The CEO millionaire was rushing to important meeting, but he couldn't walk past two lost twin boys. Pierce Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse office, his reflection a sharp contrast against the golden morning light. At 31 he was already being called the youngest self-made tech mogul in New York, but today that title felt more like a burden than an achievement. He checked his Patek Philippe watch for the third time in 5 minutes, 8:47 a.m. In exactly 73 minutes, he would either secure the biggest merger in his company's history or watch 5 years of work crumble into nothing. His executive assistant, Maya, appeared in the doorway. The board members are already gathering at Meridian Tower, Mr. Sterling. The car's waiting downstairs. Pierce grabbed his leather briefcase, containing the contracts that would transform Sterling Innovations from a successful startup into a global tech empire. The merger with Atlas Technologies wasn't just about money, it was personal validation. Proof that the scrawny kid from a broken home in Detroit could become more than just another statistic. As the elevator descended, Pierce's mind wandered to the morning exactly 15 years ago when his own father had walked out, leaving nothing but a hastily scribbled note and a mountain of gambling debts. That day had taught him the most valuable lesson of his life. The only person you can truly count on is yourself. He'd spent every moment since then ensuring he'd never be that vulnerable again. The sleek black Tesla was waiting at the curb, its door held open by his regular driver, James. "Traffic's heavy this morning, sir. We might want to take the alternative route through Chelsea." Pierce nodded, already immersed in his presentation notes. The merger meeting would bring together the most influential names in tech, and he couldn't afford a single misstep. His company's future, and the jobs of over 3,000 employees, hung in the balance. They were barely 2 blocks into their journey when James suddenly hit the brakes. Pierce lurched forward, his papers scattering across the car's floor. "What the hell?" he snapped, but the words died in his throat as he saw what had caused the sudden stop. 2 young boys, identical down to their tousled blonde hair and tear-stained faces, stood frozen in the middle of the street. They couldn't have been more than 10 years old, and the fear in their eyes struck something deep within Pierce's chest, a chord of recognition he'd thought long buried. "Should I call the police, sir?" James asked, but Pierce was already opening the car door. Something about those lost, frightened faces pulled at him, even as his watch continued its merciless countdown to the most important meeting of his career. The rational part of his brain screamed that he couldn't afford this delay, that someone else would help these kids, that his entire future was waiting at Meridian Tower. But as he stepped onto the street, another voice whispered from somewhere deeper. Sometimes the most important choices aren't choices at all. What Pierce couldn't know as he walked toward those 2 trembling boys was that this unplanned detour would do more than just delay his meeting. It would force him to confront the carefully constructed walls he'd built around his heart, and challenge everything he thought he knew about success, family, and what truly matters in life. The universe, it seemed, had chosen this moment to remind him that sometimes the most valuable transactions aren't the ones that take place in boardrooms. Pierce approached the twins slowly, conscious of how his 6-foot frame and tailored suit might appear intimidating to 2 frightened children. The boys instinctively drew closer to each other, their matching blue eyes wide with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. They wore private school uniforms, Riverside Prep, according to the emblems on their blazers, but the usually pristine outfits were disheveled, as if they'd been wandering for hours. "Hey there," Pierce said, softening his voice to the gentle tone he hadn't used since comforting his little sister during their father's drunken rages. "I'm Pierce. Are you two okay?" The slightly taller twin, by maybe half an inch, shifted protectively in front of his brother. "I'm Zachariah," he said, his voice steadier than his trembling hands suggested. "This is my brother Gabriel. We got separated from our group." Pierce glanced at his watch, 8:52 a.m. The merger meeting loomed like a sword over his head, but the practiced ease with which Zachariah placed himself between a potential threat and his brother struck a painful chord. How many times had Pierce done the same thing for Ashley during those dark years after their father left? "We were on a field trip," Gabriel spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. "To the Natural History Museum. But then we saw this really cool bookstore and we just wanted to look for a minute." He trailed off, guilt crossing his young face. Pierce felt a sudden flash of memory, himself at 12, sneaking into the public library to escape his father's creditors, finding refuge among the endless rows of books that promised different lives, different possibilities. James called from the car. "Sir, it's almost 9. The board members." Pierce held up a hand, silencing him. "Where's your school? Or do you have a phone number for your teachers?" The twins exchanged glances that made Pierce's stomach tighten. We left our phones in our backpacks. On the bus, Zachariah admitted. And we tried to find our way back, but everything looks different down here. Pierce pulled out his phone, quickly searching for Riverside Prep. His heart sank. It was clear across the city. Even if he called them now, it would take their staff at least an hour to reach this location. He looked at the twins, then at his watch, then back at the boys. Gabriel had started to cry silently, tears tracking down his cheeks as he pressed against his brother's shoulder. The gesture was so familiar it physically hurt. How many times had Ashley cried just like that, trying to be quiet so their father wouldn't hear? Maya's voice cut through his thoughts as she called from the car. "Mr. Sterling, Atlas's CEO just texted. They're all gathering early for pre-meeting discussions. We need to leave now." Pierce stood frozen between his waiting car and the lost boys, feeling the weight of the moment press down on him. The merger documents in his briefcase represented everything he'd worked for, everything he'd promised himself he'd achieve to prove his father wrong. But the tears on Gabriel's face and the fierce protectiveness in Zachariah's stance spoke to a different part of him. The part he'd tried so hard to bury under spreadsheets and stock options. As if sensing his internal struggle, Zachariah spoke again, his voice stronger now. "We'll be okay, sir. We can try to find a police officer or something." But the way Gabriel's hand tightened on his brother's sleeve told a different story. Pierce looked down at his watch one more time, knowing that every second that ticked by pushed him closer to losing the deal of a lifetime. But somehow, for the first time in 15 years, those numbers didn't seem like the most important thing in the world. Pierce loosened his Hermes tie and made a decision that would have seemed insane to him just 15 minutes ago. "James?" he called to his driver. "Pop the trunk." Turning to the twins, he softened his voice again. "How about we get you boys back to your school?" The hope that bloomed on their faces made his chest tighten in a way no business deal ever had. His phone buzzed again. Maya had sent another urgent message. The Atlas Technologies board was getting restless. 5 years of meticulous planning, countless sleepless nights, and millions in preliminary investments were slipping through his fingers. But as he looked at the twins, a memory hit him with shocking clarity. Himself at 16, working 3 jobs to keep Ashley in her private school after their father's abandonment had left them nearly destitute. He'd promised himself then that he'd never let another child feel that kind of helplessness if he could prevent it. "Mr. Sterling," Gabriel's small voice broke through his thoughts. "Are you sure? You look like you're going somewhere really important." The boy's genuine concern, even in his own moment of distress, struck Pierce hard. When was the last time anyone had shown concern for him as a person, rather than as a valuable business asset? "Actually," Pierce found himself saying, "I think I'm exactly where I need to be." He helped the boys into the Tesla's back seat, noticing how they stayed pressed together, drawing strength from each other's presence. Maya's face in the front seat was a mask of barely contained panic. "Sir, the merger, everything we've worked for?" Pierce pulled out his phone and did something that would have been unthinkable an hour ago. He began typing an email to the Atlas Technologies board. His fingers flew over the screen. "Gentlemen, an unexpected situation requiring my immediate attention has arisen. I propose we reconvene at 2 p.m. today. If this timing doesn't work for everyone, I'm prepared to walk away from the deal entirely. The choice is yours." He hit send before he could second-guess himself. The response was almost immediate. Multiple messages from board members expressing everything from confusion to outrage. But one message stood out. Atlas's CEO himself had replied, "Family emergency? Been there. 2 p.m. works. Don't make us wait twice." As they drove toward Riverside Prep, Pierce found himself drawn into conversation with the twins. Zachariah, it turned out, was fascinated by computer programming, while Gabriel loved writing stories. Their eyes lit up when Pierce mentioned his company's work in educational technology. "You make Learning Leap," Gabriel exclaimed. "That's the coolest math game ever. Everyone at school plays it." Pierce couldn't help but smile. Learning Leap had been his first major success. A program he developed specifically because he remembered how much Ashley had struggled with math after their family fell apart. It was the product his investors had been least excited about, but he'd insisted on developing it anyway. Now it was in schools across the country helping thousands of kids learn through play. "You know," Zachariah said thoughtfully, "our dad left us too." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Pierce's hands tightened on his seat's armrest. "How did you know about?" Gabriel jumped in. "We heard your assistant talking about the merger being your big chance to prove something. That's what our mom always says about her work too, that she's proving she can do it all alone." Pierce felt something crack in his carefully constructed armor. These boys, with their unflinching insight and resilient spirits, were forcing him to confront truths he'd buried under years of ambition and defensive walls. Maybe success wasn't just about proving his father wrong. Maybe it was about proving that pain and abandonment didn't have to define a person's entire story. As they neared Riverside Prep, Pierce made another impulsive decision. He pulled out one of his business cards and wrote his personal number on the back. "If you ever need anything, help with math, computer questions, or just someone to talk to who understands, call me." The twins looked at the card with a mixture of awe and gratitude that made Pierce's carefully constructed world shift just a little bit more on its axis. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories/videos we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. The reunion at Riverside Prep was both heartwarming and revealing. As they pulled up to the prestigious school's entrance, Pierce noticed a striking woman in her early 40s pacing frantically on the steps. Her designer suit couldn't hide the worry etched across her face, a look Pierce recognized all too well from his own mother's features years ago. "Mom!" the twins called out simultaneously as they burst from the car. Alexandria Blackwood, Pierce recognized her now from Forbes' 40 Under 40 list last year, rushed forward to embrace her sons. She was a prominent neurosurgeon who'd made headlines for pioneering a revolutionary surgical technique. The parallels weren't lost on Pierce, another single parent trying to build an empire while raising children alone. "I was about to call the police," Alexandria said, her voice trembling despite her composed exterior. Then she noticed Pierce and her professional mask slipped back into place. "Mr. Sterling? Pierce Sterling? I don't understand." Pierce stepped forward, suddenly conscious of how this might look. A stranger delivering her children in the middle of a school day. Before he could explain, Gabriel jumped in. "Mom, he saved us. We got lost and he gave up this super important meeting just to help us." Alexandria's eyes widened. "Meeting? Not the Atlas Technologies merger?" Pierce nodded, trying to hide his surprise that she knew about it. "The very same. Though I've managed to reschedule for this afternoon." Alexandria's face softened with understanding. "I know what that kind of decision costs. I once walked out of a career-making surgery because Gabriel had a severe asthma attack. My colleagues called me unprofessional, but..." She glanced at her sons. "Some things matter more." The weight of her words hung in the air, stirring something in Pierce's carefully ordered worldview. Zachariah tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mom, did you know Mr. Sterling made Learning Leap? And he said we could call him if we need help with anything." Alexandria's eyebrows rose. "Learning Leap? That program transformed Gabriel's relationship with mathematics. We owe you a debt of gratitude even before today, it seems." Pierce watched the family interaction with a mixture of warmth and an unfamiliar ache. The twins' obvious adoration for their mother, despite their father's abandonment, spoke to Alexandria's strength. She'd clearly done what Pierce had attempted in his own way, turned pain into purpose, but without losing her humanity in the process. "Mr. Sterling," Alexandria said suddenly, "I know you have your rescheduled meeting, but would you consider joining us for dinner this weekend? I'd love to hear more about your educational technology initiatives, and I suspect my boys would appreciate a male perspective on certain matters." She glanced meaningfully at her sons, who were practically bouncing with excitement at the suggestion. Pierce felt his carefully constructed walls wavering. The invitation represented everything he'd been avoiding for years: personal connections, emotional investment, the risk of caring about people who might leave. But looking at the twins' hopeful faces, he remembered something his therapist had said years ago, before he'd stopped going: "The walls we build to keep out pain also keep out joy." Maya cleared her throat from the car, a gentle reminder of the ticking clock. Pierce had exactly 4 hours to prepare for the rescheduled merger meeting. But somehow, as he looked at this unexpected family before him, the pressure felt different. The meeting was still crucial, but it no longer felt like the only thing that mattered. "I'd be honored," he heard himself say. "Though I should warn you, my cooking stories all end in fire alarms." The twins burst out laughing, and even Alexandria cracked a genuine smile. For the first time in years, Pierce felt something shift inside him. As if a door he'd thought permanently locked had started to crack open. Back in his Tesla, heading towards Sterling Innovations headquarters, Pierce found himself replaying the morning's events in his mind. Maya was frantically reworking his schedule on her tablet, but he was lost in thought, remembering the way Gabriel's eyes had lit up talking about learning leap, how Zachariah's protective instincts mirrored his own childhood role. "Sir," Maya ventured carefully, "the board is requesting an emergency pre-meeting at 1 p.m. They're concerned about your commitment to the merger." Pierce straightened his tie, a flash of his old determination returning. "Good. Let them be concerned." The emergency board meeting was exactly as tense as Pierce had expected. 12 stern faces stared at him across the polished mahogany table in Sterling Innovation's main conference room. Harrison Blake, his longest-serving board member, spoke first. "Pierce, what the hell happened this morning? Atlas's board members were already seated when they got your email." Pierce stood, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate calm. "Let me ask you something, Harrison. Why did you invest in Sterling Innovations 5 years ago?" The older man blinked, thrown by the unexpected question. "Because you showed promise. The determination to succeed at any cost." "At any cost," Pierce repeated softly. "That's been my mantra since I was 16. Since my father walked out and left me to raise my sister alone." He pulled up Learning Leap statistics on the wall screen. "This program, the one most of you advised against developing, now helps over 2 million children improve their math skills. It generates 30% of our annual revenue. Which is precisely why Atlas wants to acquire us," another board member interjected. "But if you've blown the deal," Pierce held up his hand. "This morning I met 2 boys who reminded me why I created Learning Leap in the first place. Not for the revenue but because I remembered what it felt like to be a child failed by the adults in your life." He started pacing, his voice growing stronger. "We've been approaching this merger all wrong. Atlas wants our educational technology division because it's profitable. But what if instead of selling to them we pitched a partnership? One that would put Learning Leap and our other educational programs into every school in the country." The boardroom fell silent. Harrison leaned forward, interest flickering in his eyes. "A partnership rather than an acquisition? Atlas would never," Pierce smiled, pulling up another document on the screen. "Actually, I've spent the last 3 hours developing a proposal. Atlas keeps their corporate structure, we keep our autonomy, and together we create an educational technology foundation that would transform public education in America." "That's actually brilliant," Harrison admitted. "More tax benefits than an acquisition, better public relations, and we'd maintain control of our core technologies." Other board members were nodding now, the earlier tension dissolving into excited murmurs as they reviewed the numbers Pierce had projected. "Sometimes," Pierce said quietly, "the best business decisions come from remembering our humanity." He thought of Alexandria Blackwood, who'd walked away from a career making surgery for her child, and how that choice had ultimately led to her greatest medical breakthrough. Success doesn't have to mean sacrificing everything else. As the board members filed out, energized by the new direction, Pierce felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. His phone buzzed with a text, a photo from Alexandria showing the twins back in class, both giving thumbs up. Below it was a message: "They haven't stopped talking about their new friend. Thank you for being the right person at the right moment." Pierce saved the photo, allowing himself to feel the full weight of what it meant to impact someone's life beyond just business metrics. The merger meeting was in 45 minutes, but for the first time in his career, he wasn't thinking about the numbers. He was thinking about legacy, about what it truly means to succeed, and about 2 brave boys who had unknowingly helped him find his way back to himself. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories/videos we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. The Meridian Tower's 50th floor conference room buzzed with anticipation as Pierce strode in at exactly 2 p.m. Atlas Technology CEO Winston Crawford, a silver-haired man with shrewd eyes, stood to greet him. "Quite the dramatic morning, Sterling. Your message certainly got everyone's attention." Pierce set up his presentation with a confidence that felt different from his usual boardroom bravado. This wasn't about proving his worth anymore, it was about creating something meaningful. "Gentlemen, ladies," he began, "I want to tell you about 2 boys I met this morning." A few board members exchanged puzzled glances, but Winston's eyes narrowed with interest. "These boys were lost, scared, and needed help. Much like I was at their age after my father abandoned our family." Pierce clicked to his first slide, Learning Leap's impact statistics. "Many of you know this program. What you might not know is that I created it because my sister struggled with math after our father left. Today it helps millions of children, including one of those boys I met this morning." He moved through his presentation with passionate precision, outlining his vision for an educational technology partnership that would transform both companies. Atlas has the infrastructure. Sterling has the innovation. Together, we could revolutionize educational access across America. The room remained silent, but Pierce could see the spark of excitement in several eyes. Winston leaned forward. "You're suggesting we abandon the acquisition plan we've spent months developing?" Pierce met his gaze steadily. "I'm suggesting we create something better. A partnership that serves both our bottom line and a greater purpose." He pulled up the financial projections. The tax benefits alone would increase profit margins by 12% compared to an acquisition. Add in the PR value and the expanded market reach. Winston's expression shifted from skepticism to intrigue as he studied the numbers. "But more than that," Pierce continued, "think about your own children. Your grandchildren. What if we could give them, and every child in America, access to the kind of educational tools that level the playing field? What if success in school didn't depend on your zip code or your parents' bank account?" As he spoke, Pierce felt his phone vibrate. A quick glance showed another message from Alexandria. "The boys just finished their school day. They're still talking about learning Leap and their superhero in a suit. You've made quite an impression." The timing of the message felt like a sign, reinforcing everything he was fighting for in this room. Winston stood slowly, commanding the room's attention. "When I received your email this morning, Sterling, I was ready to walk away from this deal entirely." He paused, letting the tension build. "But now I understand. You weren't having a crisis of commitment. You were having an epiphany of purpose." Pierce held his breath as Winston extended his hand. "I didn't build Atlas by following the conventional path. I built it by recognizing transformative opportunities when they appeared. Let's create something extraordinary together." The room erupted in applause, but Pierce barely heard it. He was thinking about Zachariah and Gabriel, about his own sister Ashley, about all the children who needed someone to believe in them. Sometimes the biggest business deals weren't about business at all, they were about remembering why you started in the first place. 3 days after the merger meeting, Pierce found himself standing in front of Alexandria Blackwood's brownstone in the Upper West Side, feeling oddly nervous. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but somehow dinner with the Blackwoods made his heart race like a teenager's. The door flew open before he could knock, revealing the twins in matching casual clothes instead of their school uniforms. "Mr. Sterling," they exclaimed in unison, their excitement palpable. Gabriel grabbed his right hand while Zachariah took his left, practically dragging him inside. The warm aroma of home cooking filled the air, so different from the sterile emptiness of his own penthouse. "Boys, let the man breathe," Alexandria called from the kitchen, emerging with an apron over her designer clothes. "Pierce, welcome to our chaos." She smiled warmly, and Pierce felt something shift in his chest. The woman before him was different from the polished surgeon he'd met at the school, more relaxed, more real. "We made your Learning Leap score go up by 20 points. Gabriel announced proudly. "And I started learning coding because of what you said about making games," Zachariah added. Their enthusiasm was infectious, reminding Pierce of why he'd created educational software in the first place. As they moved to the dining room, Pierce noticed the walls were covered with the boys' artwork and academic achievements, alongside news clippings of Alexandria's medical breakthroughs. It was a home that celebrated both success and creativity, something his own childhood house had sorely lacked. "So," Alexandria said as they settled around the table, "I heard about the partnership with Atlas. Quite a different approach from what the business world expected." Pierce watched as she served her sons, making sure each got equal portions of their favorites. "Sometimes the unexpected path is the right one," he replied, thinking about how a chance encounter with 2 lost boys had changed everything. "Like Mom's special surgery technique." Gabriel piped up. "Nobody thought it would work, but she proved them wrong." Alexandria blushed slightly. "Well, sometimes you have to trust your instincts even when others doubt you." "That's what we did at the bookstore," Zachariah said quietly. "We knew we shouldn't have left the group, but something just felt important about that moment." Pierce leaned forward, curious. "What made you stop at that particular bookstore?" The twins exchanged one of their telepathic looks before Gabriel answered. "They had this huge display about successful people who overcame hard stuff. There was a book about you, Mr. Sterling." Pierce's fork froze halfway to his mouth. "About me?" "Rising from the Ashes, America's Self-Made Success Stories," Alexandria supplied. "The boys have been fascinated by it since they saw your picture." I think they recognized something in your story that resonated with their own experiences. Pierce felt his throat tighten. All these years he'd been trying to prove something to his absent father, never realizing that his story might help others heal from similar wounds. He looked at the twins, saw the hope and admiration in their eyes, and understood that success meant nothing if you couldn't use it to lift others up. "You know," he said, pulling out his phone, "I just got the preliminary designs for Learning Leap's next version. Would you boys like to be our first beta testers?" Their eyes lit up like Christmas morning, and even Alexandria leaned forward with interest. As Pierce showed them the new features, he realized he felt more at home in this warm, loving brownstone than he ever had in his luxury penthouse. Sometimes the family you need finds you when you least expect it, and success isn't about what you achieve. It's about who you become along the way. The weeks following the dinner flew by in a whirlwind of activity. Pierce found himself spending more and more time with the Blackwoods, his weekends filled with beta testing sessions that felt more like family game nights. The twins' enthusiasm for Learning Leap's new features helped shape the program in ways his development team never imagined. One Saturday afternoon, as Pierce sat cross-legged on the Blackwoods' living room floor helping Zachariah debug his first piece of code, his phone buzzed with a message from his sister Ashley. "Saw the announcement about the Atlas partnership. Mom would be so proud of what you're doing with educational access. She always said you'd change the world. She just didn't know it would be by remembering your heart instead of just using your head." Pierce looked up from the phone to find Gabriel watching him intently. "Are you okay, Mr. Sterling? You look like you might cry." The boy's genuine concern touched something deep in Pierce's soul. "I'm better than okay, Gabriel. Sometimes good memories can make your eyes water too." Alexandria appeared in the doorway, watching the scene with a soft smile. "Boys, why don't you show Pierce your science project? The one about successful people who overcame obstacles." The twins raced to their study room, leaving Pierce and Alexandria alone for a moment. "You know," she said quietly, "I haven't seen them this excited about anything since before their father left. They've always been brilliant but guarded. Afraid to let anyone too close." She paused, meeting Pierce's eyes. "Until you." Before Pierce could respond, the twins burst back in, carrying a large presentation board covered in photos and articles. "Look." Zachariah pointed excitedly. "We added you to our wall of heroes." There, alongside pictures of Alexandria and other inspiring figures, was a recent photo of Pierce helping the boys with their coding project. "Heroes aren't just people who save the world," Gabriel explained seriously. "They're people who stop to help others even when they have really important things to do." Pierce felt his chest tighten as he read the caption they'd written under his photo. "Mr. Sterling, proved that being successful means helping others succeed too." "I think," Alexandria said softly, touching Pierce's shoulder, "sometimes the universe puts the right people in our path at exactly the right moment, even if it means getting a little lost along the way." The twins nodded sagely, as if this profound observation made perfect sense to their young minds. Looking at the wall of heroes, Pierce realized that success had a different meaning now. It wasn't about proving his father wrong anymore. It wasn't even about the billions his company was worth. Success was about the light in these boys' eyes when they mastered a new concept, about using his resources to open doors for others, about building connections that mattered more than any merger deal. "You know what this project needs?" Pierce said, pulling out his tablet. "A section about two brave boys who taught a busy CEO the most important lesson of his life." The twins' faces lit up with curiosity. "What lesson?" they asked in unison. Pierce smiled, feeling more whole than he had in years. "That sometimes the best path forward isn't the one you planned. It's the one that your heart recognizes even when your head tries to ignore it." If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories/videos we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. 1 month after their first meeting, Pierce sat in his office reviewing the final paperwork for the Atlas partnership when Maya interrupted with an urgent message. "Sir, there's a situation at Riverside Prep with the twins." His heart dropped as he grabbed his coat, not even bothering to ask for details. When he arrived at the school, he found a scene he hadn't expected. Instead of an emergency, he walked into the school's annual Career Day presentation. Alexandria stood at the back of the auditorium, trying to suppress a smile as the twins took the stage. "Our hero's presentation today," Zachariah began, his voice clear and confident, "is about someone who taught us that true success isn't just about making money." Gabriel stepped forward, continuing seamlessly, "It's about being the person who stops to help others, even when it costs you something. Pierce froze in the doorway as pictures of him appeared on the screen behind the boys, candid shots of their coding sessions, beta testing meetings and family dinners. His throat tightened as he realized they'd been planning this surprise for weeks. "Mr. Sterling could have ignored us that day we were lost," Zachariah said, his young voice filled with conviction. "He had a huge business meeting that could have made him even richer." Gabriel jumped in, but instead he showed us that being successful means helping others succeed too. The twins went on to explain Learning Leap's impact on education, the new partnership with Atlas that would bring educational technology to underserved schools, and how one person's choice to be kind could create ripples of change. Other parents and students in the audience were clearly moved, some wiping away tears. "But the best part," Gabriel concluded, "is that by helping us, Mr. Sterling helped himself too. He remembered that family isn't just about who you're born to, it's about who you choose to love and support." Zachariah nodded, adding, "And sometimes getting a little lost is how you find your way home." Alexandria appeared at Pierce's side, squeezing his hand as they watched the boys receive a standing ovation. "They spent weeks preparing this," she whispered. "They wanted to show you how much you've changed their lives." Pierce swallowed hard, watching these two remarkable boys who had somehow become such an important part of his world. "They changed mine too," he replied softly. "They helped me remember who I was before I let fear and ambition build walls around my heart." Alexandria's hand tightened on his. As the presentation ended and the twins rushed toward them, beaming with pride, Pierce realized that success had a completely different meaning now. It wasn't measured in dollars or deals, but in moments like this, in the light in these boys' eyes, in the warmth of belonging, in the knowledge that sometimes the best investments have nothing to do with money at all. Later that evening, Pierce hosted a celebration dinner at his penthouse. The first time he'd ever invited anyone into his private space. The twins explored the minimalist apartment with unbridled curiosity, while Alexandria helped him set up the catering he'd ordered. His sister Ashley had flown in as a surprise, completing their unconventional family gathering. "Your place needs color," Gabriel declared, studying the monochromatic decor. "And family photos," Zachariah added, pointing to the empty walls. Pierce laughed, realizing how stark his home must seem to them after their warm, lived-in brownstone. "Maybe you boys could help me with that," he suggested, watching their faces light up at the invitation. Ashley pulled him aside as the twins began enthusiastically planning his apartment's transformation. "You know, Pierce, this is the first time I've seen you truly happy since we were kids." She gestured to where Alexandria was now helping the boys sketch out decoration ideas on a napkin. "You've built something amazing with your company, but this is what Mom always wanted for you." Pierce thought about the day everything had changed, when he'd had to choose between a crucial meeting and helping two lost boys. "I spent 15 years trying to prove I wasn't like our father," he said quietly. "Trying to show I could succeed where he failed. But these boys, they helped me see that true success isn't about proving anything. It's about being present for the moments that matter." Alexandria joined them, her eyes twinkling. "The boys have quite the renovation plan for you. Though I should warn you, their design aesthetic tends toward the dramatically colorful." Pierce found himself smiling, imagining his pristine apartment transformed by their exuberant vision. "Bring on the color. This place could use some life." "Mr. Sterling," Zachariah called from across the room. "Can we show Mom and Aunt Ashley our new coding project?" The word, aunt, fell so naturally from his lips that it took Pierce a moment to register its significance. He glanced at Ashley, seeing tears in her eyes as she mouthed the word, aunt, with wonder. "You know," Alexandria said softly, watching the twins pull up Learning Leap on their tablets, "they've never called anyone aunt before. Not even my sister." The weight of that trust, that acceptance, settled around Pierce's heart like a warm embrace. As they gathered around the boys' presentation, Pierce realized that his life had completely transformed in just 1 month. His careful, controlled existence had been invaded by laughter, chaos, and more love than he'd thought possible. The walls he'd built to protect himself had become bridges, connecting him to a future he'd never dared to imagine. Ashley nudged him gently. "Stop thinking so hard, big brother. Sometimes the best things in life don't need analysis, they just need to be embraced." Pierce watched as the twins demonstrated their project, their excitement infectious, their presence in his life a miracle he was only beginning to fully appreciate. 6 months later, Pierce stood in his transformed penthouse, now filled with colorful artwork, family photos, and the unmistakable warmth of love. The twins had their own room here, decorated in vibrant blues and greens for their weekend stays. The wall of heroes from their science project had been recreated on a prominent wall, expanded to include new stories of triumph over adversity. On this particular morning, Pierce was preparing for another board meeting, but this one was different. The Learning Leap Foundation was launching today, a joint initiative between Sterling Innovations and Atlas Technologies that would provide free educational technology to underfunded schools across America. The twins had helped design the program's new interface, their insights proving invaluable in making it more engaging for students. Ready for the big announcement? Alexandria asked, straightening his tie with practiced ease. Their relationship had blossomed naturally over these months, built on shared values and mutual understanding. The twins bounded into the room, already dressed in mini-suits that matched Pierce's. "Mom said we can come to the press conference," Gabriel exclaimed. "We helped design it, so we should be there when you tell everyone about it," Zachariah added confidently. Pierce knelt down to their level, something that felt natural now. "You two are the reason this all happened. You showed me that sometimes getting lost is the best way to find your true path." As they rode the elevator down to the waiting car, Pierce reflected on how much had changed since that fateful morning. His company was more successful than ever, but success meant something entirely different now. It wasn't measured in stock prices or merger deals, but in the lives they touched, the families they helped, the bridges they built. At the press conference, Pierce surprised everyone by inviting the twins to join him at the podium. "6 months ago," he began, "I almost missed the most important meeting of my life. Not the merger meeting I was rushing to, but an encounter with two extraordinary boys who reminded me why I started this company in the first place." The twins beamed as Pierce continued, "Today we're launching the Learning Leap Foundation, which will ensure that every child, regardless of their circumstances, has access to quality educational tools. Because success isn't just about personal achievement, it's about lifting others up along the way." Later that evening, as their extended family gathered for dinner, including Ashley, who had moved back to New York to help run the foundation, Pierce watched the twins teaching their latest coding project to their mother. The sight filled him with a joy he'd never known in all his years of chasing corporate success. He thought about that morning 6 months ago, when he'd had to choose between a crucial meeting and helping two lost boys. In trying to be the opposite of his father, he'd almost become someone just as lost. Someone who measured life's value only in dollars and deals. But fate, or perhaps something more divine, had placed two remarkable children in his path, teaching him that the greatest success stories aren't written in bank accounts, but in the hearts we touch and the lives we change. Sometimes the most important turns in our journey aren't marked on any map. Sometimes the greatest achievements aren't the ones that can be measured or counted. And sometimes the family we need most isn't the one we're born into, but the one we build through choices, love, and the courage to let others into our hearts. If you've enjoyed this story about finding success, family, and purpose in unexpected places, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need this message today. Your comments mean the world to us. Let us know what touched you most about Pierce and the twins' journey. And if you'd like to support more stories like this, consider using YouTube's Super Thanks feature. Your support helps us continue creating meaningful content that reminds us all of what truly matters in life. The greatest success isn't measured in millions, but in moments of connection, in lives touched, and in the courage to let love transform us into who we were always meant to be. Remember, sometimes getting lost is the only way to find your way home.